That's that all I know is that I don't know anything. The more I learn, the more I learn, the more I know that I don't know everything. And towards the end of the novel, they ask him, "So what's next?" And that is how the novel ends. It is necessary to cultivate one's garden, go forth and take care of doing that. And so that is a daily mantra for me to be able to wake up and to think to myself, what am I going to learn today? How am I going to be curious about X, Y, and Z?
Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their perspective, offering you daily inspiration to see life a little differently. Today I'm joined by Sasha Mereu, a musician who calls himself punk rock Willy Wonka. And honestly, that energy comes through immediately. He's performed over 1,000 shows worldwide, including Broadway. But what strikes me most is how he's channeling his decades in music toward creating real change for fellow artists. So let's dive in with Sasha and discover the words that guide him through both creativity and purpose. So just start with your name and then share the quote.
No worries. No, so my name is Sasha Mereu.
Okay.
Um, I am a co-founder of a company called Fairview, and the quote that I gave you is by Voltaire, actually, and I learned it originally in French. Il faut cultiver notre jardin. It is necessary to cultivate one's garden, and
Hmm.
this has steered my life since I learned that when I was 15, and
Wow.
it actually has led me sort of to two other ones, but they're all related at the same time. So I'll give you a real quick rundown of that first one. So it is necessary to cultivate your gardens. Voltaire was talking about your mind, of course. This comes from his novel Candide at the very end, and after Candide gets back from world travels, and he's more worldly and understands a little bit more about how things work and himself and his place in the world, he realizes it is necessary to cultivate one's garden. And what this means to me, how I interpreted that, is you have to actively work at becoming educated, educating yourself, and taking things from every experience that kind of comes your way, whether it's positive or negative, or whether you can interpret it as good or bad if you want to. But there's always something to be learned there, and that you actively have to engage in this process by cultivating one's garden. That allows you to happen to life rather than have life happen to you and having you be a passive observer in your own existence. And
Wow.
so, uh, in terms of cultivating your garden, I had a good friend of mine when I graduated university. He gave me as a gift he gave me a piece of silver, an ounce of silver, like an American dollar or whatever it was. And I think at the time it was worth about $32 American. And he also gave me a 5,000 ruble note from the Soviet Union. That is not worth even now the paper that it's printed on. It used to be quite valuable when that country was in existence. And what he told me was that education is the only thing that holds its value over time. That you can
Hmm.
have everything taken away from you, uh, your riches, certainly. You can have your home taken, you can have your clothes, you can have your human dignity taken away from you. But what you put here is what is going to make you into you. And so that immediately, of course, came back. It is necessary to cultivate one's garden and continue to do so. And the way that I've gone about doing that is by staying curious. That is pretty much my favorite noun in the entire world. I am curiosity is
Yeah.
it's a gift. It's a perspective. It's a way of approaching things um, that allows you to adopt a growth mindset. When you get curious about something and how it works and how you might apply it to your own life, or how you possibly could apply it to others or to something that is bigger than yourself, which is absolutely what is happening with the company that I've just founded. Um, so it all comes back to that quote for me, and the way in which you cultivate your garden is important. And if we want to continue with that metaphor a little bit more, yes, you can just water the plants and let the sun do their thing and call it good. But if you really want to get down to it, that you also have to weed things and take out the bad plants that are trying to strangle everything else, and you have to fertilize the soil and make sure that what is going into that is going to help everything grow. And certain plants grow better or have a symbiotic relationship with other plants and with animals around that. And so all of this taken here now, extended, to your brain, it really comes down to these other two quotes that I sort of picked up over the course of my career. So,
Yeah.
real quick, in terms of who I am. I am a creative. I am an artist, a visual artist. I'm a conjurer, a magician. I have spent 20 years doing grand stage illusion and magic on Broadway and in theaters around the world, sawing women in half and levitating people and doing stuff like that. I'm also a musician and a writer. And what I learned in the theater about how to cultivate your garden is that we fall back on what we rehearse. So
Wow.
on stage, on stage, when you're learning lines and you're learning blocking and doing all of that stuff, a lot of times you get people who, actors or performers or whatnot, who they're like, "Ah, I don't really want to give 100%. I don't want to do the whole thing. Like, I'll wait until the night of the play, wait until the audience is here, and then I'll go a full 100%. And that way I'll just sort of say, I'm saving it up." And it really does not work that way. We fall back on what we rehearse. When something goes wrong, and in live theater, something always goes wrong. That's part of what makes live theater so interesting to attend. Not necessarily that something's going to go bad, but there's an energy there. It's very spontaneous, and the audience can pick up on that. And so when something goes awry, and you as an actor or performer, you get scared or out of your groove, something goes wrong. You are going to perform what you rehearsed, what you practiced up until that moment. And if you practiced not doing anything and not giving your all, that is exactly what is going to happen to you. And so in terms of cultivating your garden and moving forward with that, you have to actively engage in rehearsing what you want to have happen. And this extends into your professional life. If you are used to only giving 60% or thereabouts and not really caring about what you're up to, then that is the output that you get into a habit. It's, you start to create habits that are going to bleed into everything. If this is how you approach relationships, if you are used to only being sort of lukewarm or only really caring about yourself and not others, if you rehearse being indifferent because you just are bored or you don't really care or something along those lines, then that is who you are going to become. And so you need to be careful about how you end up cultivating your garden. And the third quote that kind of goes along with that, I learned doing magic, doing stage illusion. And that is that excellence is in the details. And like, that is such a simple phrase. It sounds almost like, well, yeah, duh, Sasha, of course excellence is in the details. But really, what happens is the distance in between bad and good is infinitely smaller than the distance between good and great. When you have taken the time to pay attention to all of the little details and to make each one shine, each one as flawless as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, because perfection is we're never exactly going to get there. But if you pay attention to each of those little details, what you have at the very end is going to become grander and bigger than the sum of its parts. And so that all three of those things all stemmed from that quote that I read in, when I was learning high school French when I was 15 years old, back in the 90s. Il faut cultiver notre jardin. It is necessary to cultivate one's garden.
Wow. 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 Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Of course.
uh, so, question I want to ask now is: there's so many distractions, so many stuff out there that's kind of like weeds. Still using the metaphor of the quote you gave. How do you
Uh-huh.
stay on top of your game when it comes to like chasing your curiosity and learning and kind of chasing knowledge and all that.
So it goes hand in hand with that other quote of falling back on what you rehearse, and a big part of it, like the way to start is being actively engaged in your own life. Is that you one, and this is going to sound super, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times. I'm sure many of your guests have said the same thing, but it starts with being grateful. It starts with being present in your life and recognizing uh, of all of the time that you could have been born. Now is pretty incredible. The fact that if you break your leg, our cure for that is not a saw. That we can take care of that when it comes to medical science. The fact that if you end up getting a cold or the flu or something like that, that is not automatically a death sentence. That is pretty incredible. So being grateful and recognizing what you have and actively engaging in the day. Don't let things just become routine. And it goes hand in hand again with curiosity and being curious about the day. I did Taekwondo, the martial art, for about 20 years when I was growing up, and one of the things that I learned in that context came from the Shaolin Temple actually, and that was to be grateful at the end of each day, right before you go to sleep. To be grateful for the day and to go through and reflect what was good about today. And even if it was a really rough day, even if it was really challenging, and trust me, on some of the worst days of my life, I have struggled to engage in doing this, but in doing so, it allows you to reflect and keeps you present rather than getting lost in this repetition of my life just sucks and everything is the same and it's just going and there's no end to this and there's no purpose. The second that we start to believe that we don't have a purpose, that's when things start to go really downhill. And so coming back to your question of how do you engage in tearing the weeds out and making sure that you are cultivating things decently, it does take active attention on your part to ask yourself, is this decision that I'm making, is this going to be good for the whole? As opposed to is it going to be good long term, as opposed to just giving me a pleasure or fixing something short term, just to the immediate need of what's going on. But curiosity is a huge part of that for me.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. In the context, yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier on, what's the context of the quote? It's necessary
Of the
to
original.
yeah, it's necessary to take care of your garden.
Yeah, the original context of the original quote, it is necessary to cultivate your garden. It comes from the end of the novel Candide, by Voltaire. So Candide is this young man who he's born. He really he doesn't know anything. He doesn't really engage. He just sort of drifts through the day, and things happen, and he sort of has feelings about stuff and people, but he doesn't really go anywhere beyond just the surface and what he sees. He's kind of one of those people that you ask him, how was the day? And he'll give you like like, I don't know, it was a day today. It just is. And then something major happens. He has to go on a trip to South America, and he ends up losing people that he realizes later that he cared about, and having a bunch of experiences. And once he has had a whole bunch of education by being out in the world and learning about his place. And really, it comes down to learning that we don't know much.
Yeah,
That's that all I know is that I don't know anything. The more I learn, the more I learn, the more I know that I don't know everything. And towards the end of the novel, they ask him, so what's next? And that is how the novel ends. It is necessary to cultivate one's garden, go forth and take care of doing that. And so that is a daily mantra for me, to be able to wake up and to think to myself, what am I going to learn today? How am I going to be curious about X, Y, and Z? And it can be big things. It can be, questions about economics, if you want, or world news, or what's happening. It can be questions about science. It can be small things, and what's happening with with my kids and in their life, and what can I learn from them and their experience and what's going on. And a
Yeah.
lot of it is being present.
Yeah, yeah. Over the course of years, has there been a situation where you've had to like redact the quotes to fit the context of the situation?
Yeah, I believe so. Coming back to so I was a teacher for about 5 years of high school, so teenagers, and I taught French and theater for that. And oftentimes there was a lot of challenges happening. I taught at a very poor inner city school that did not have very much funding, and we did not have a whole bunch of resources. It When it came down to cultivating that particular garden, um, I had to change my perspective on how I was going to go about doing it, because what I had done previously was not effective. And what that taught to me was that there is not a blanket answer to what's going on. You have to look at context is an amazing word, and you've used it a couple of times. It all really depends on the context, and the context of that school was different from what my experience had been. And so rather than me getting angry at the kids who were and not doing what they were supposed to be doing or whatever, um, I listened to them, and I listened to what the reality of their life was like and what was happening there. And I was able to figure out how best to cultivate my garden, but in doing so to help them do theirs, and to be, the guide that a teacher is supposed to be. At least, in my opinion, there's lots of different philosophies on teaching and such, but that was something, being flexible enough to listen to them and have them teach me how they needed to be guided.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh, oh. I like the metaphorical standpoint of the quote.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing the story behind the quote.
Hey,
Yeah.
my pleasure. Thank you. I really
Uh,
appreciate it.
yeah. If the quote was kind of like a product that was for sale, and you know how products
Uh-huh.
for sale, they kind of have the beware section where they advise people who are about to get the product of some of the complications and the challenges this product has. What would you say would be stamped on the very box that we're looking for?
Okay. That's a good question. So, okay, if this particular quote were a product, what would be stamped on the box to be able to do that? Um, I would say probably it would probably be uh, one size fits all, but with a little asterisk, and then the asterisk would say uh, some restrictions may apply, or some amendments may apply to that. I think it is a good overall arching quote, but it is about the personalization of how you would be able to do that. And I'm not I'm not necessarily in marketing, so I don't know. I'm sure there would be a good catchy slogan that we could put on there to be able to make that inclusive and um, have it become more attractive to people. But I think it's a one size fits all, but you have to make the size fit to you. You have to it will adapt to you, but you have to put the work in to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh,
Okay, now I'm gonna be thinking about that, and that's gonna be my curiosity thing for the rest of the night. How would I go about doing that? So
yeah.
maybe I'll email you when I come up with it.
Yeah, that would be nice, honestly. Oh, okay. I guess the next question I want to ask now is, do you share these quotes often with the public, or is this just something that you keep personal and you happen to share for the first time on the podcast?
This is absolutely the first time.
Wow.
Actually, I don't usually share that often. When I was teaching theater, um, the other two that we fall back on what we rehearse, and excellence is in the details. My theater kids absolutely could tell you; they would hear that all the time. But I just that other the original quote, that is something that I've just sort of kept personal for me. Not because I'm trying to keep it away from the world or anything like that, but having that particular quote that comes from 18th century France oftentimes does not have a very active uh, daily context for me to be able to share that out with everyone. But it's something that is personal to me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank
I'm really glad you got to share. You stayed in France.
I lived in Paris for a while, actually. When I was in my 20s, I was studying to, I was teaching English, actually, being certified to do a CELTA by Cambridge. And I have spent, I am not a non-native speaker. I learned it when I was in high school. One of my degrees is in French. And then I ended up, when I had kids, I've only ever spoken French with both of them growing up. So they ended up being raised bilingual and
Wow.
are are great.
Yeah,
And
that's
they know that quote.
yeah, that's one of the benefits. So they get to speak two languages. Wow. Yeah, that's really a flex too.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Oh, on one final note before we kind of like wrap things up,
Of course.
what would be like the key advice if they could take only one thing from this podcast episode that you'd have to give to them?
Ooh, okay. Really good question. Uh, if you take only one thing uh, away from this podcast, and it's not the quote itself is not so important as sort of the feeling behind it. I would say cultivate your curiosity. It is that leads to a growth mindset. Being able to remain curious about life, about the things that you don't know, about the experiences that you've never had, it protects you from becoming insular and just worrying about yourself. And in cultivating that curiosity actively, that is now going to allow you to continue to grow, and you are going to practice the thing which you are going to fall back on that you were in the process of becoming. And that thing is it is the embodiment of excellence.
Yeah.
Cultivate your curiosity.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sasha. Where can people learn more about you and what you do?
Um, well, I'll tell you what, my company just launched a new website. We would love for you to go check it out, especially if you happen to be a musician. We are a company that is trying to build a digital platform for musicians to be able to help them make a living doing their music rather than having two, three, four other jobs to make ends meet. So that is
Yeah.
fairview.net, Fairvu, Fairvu.net. I'm out on all of the socials along with Fairview. Please come and follow, like, and subscribe, and we would love to hear about your experiences.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again for coming on the podcast and for sharing your favorite quote and some of the stories behind it. I I'm deeply inspired, and I trust that my listeners will inspired too.
All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Relatable Wisdom. If you found something meaningful in this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Concord, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.